More email scandal. Hillary's not alone in this. More unethical acts and disappearing evidence. Another cover-up. The IRS boss who was busted for bad acts evidently conducted her official, sensitive IRS business on a very unofficial email account. What is it with these ladies? Like they wouldn't get caught? Learners IRS that she ran, they engaged in a practice of automatically deleting all communications using a couple of different tools. Why so many secrets? Joining me now, we're going to find out. It's the U.S. Senator who's leading the charge to get truth out of this regime. And we thank him for his leadership and his tenacity on this. I'm going to ask him what's going on with the IRS. So Senator Orrin Hatch, thank you so much. Honored that you're here, sir.
Well, I'm honored to be with you. This is great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Now, the recent IRS data breach where personal information and thousands of taxpayers, the information about them was released, like social security numbers and bank account information. Who did it? What became of that frightening breach? And does that have anything to do with what's going on with Lois Lerner and her email scandal?
You know, one of our most important functions in the Senate Finance Committee is oversight, particularly over the tax and revenue issues. So we've held some rigorous oversight hearings, and they range from protecting taxpayers from filing scams to the theft of taxpayer information, which is really serious stuff. And what we found is that the IRS, this IRS scandal, everything from the IRS scandal to the IRS data breach and everything in between, is that this government has grown too large and too unaccountable to the American people. And it shows gross mismanagement at the highest levels of the IRS. It confirms an unacceptable truth that the IRS is prone to abuse. And we found serious evidence that the administration's political agenda guided the IRS's actions with respect to their treatment of conservative groups. Personal politics of IRS employees, such as Lois Lerner, also impacted how the IRS conducted its business. So, in my view, American taxpayers should expect more from the IRS, and we deserve an IRS that lives up to its mission statement of administering the laws fairly and impartially, regardless of political affiliation. And personally, I believe we've got the IRS should be an independent agency. It should not be permitted to unionize, but it's unionized. Do you know how hard it is to fire an IRS employee? It's almost impossible. No matter how incompetent, no matter how wrong they are, it's just almost impossible because of the collective bargaining agreements with the IRS. And we all know the unions are not very favorable to the Republicans, and in this particular case, there were a number of IRS people who deliberately targeted Tea Party and other conservative organizations by treating them differently than other types of organizations.
Well, I appreciate the way that you are terming this. It's unacceptable truth, meaning the people of America are counting on Congress to do something about that unacceptable truth. And we appreciate you leading the charge here as chair of the Finance Committee. What is it that you can do, though, to clean it up? Or, like many of us would love to see, just shut it down. The IRS sounds irreparably broken. What can we do to help?
Well, it is broken, and we have very little we can really do other than explain these things to the public at large, and that's having an effect. But until we get a president who's willing to clean up and clean some of these bureaucracies out and do what's right, it's very difficult to it's very difficult to get a lot done. You know, the conservative organizations, for instance, here were singled out based on the existence of key words in their names, or any other indication that they held conservative ideals, like reducing the role of government or paying down the public debt. They were identified based on a political philosophy. And there were, I think, approximately 300 Tea Party conservative groups were harmed by the IRS. And the political views appear to have influenced how the IRS did business. And, you know, Lois Lerner is a Democrat. She admits that. But the level of her dislike for Republicans, and especially conservatives, was really shocking. And the report that we did, we put a lot of time into that, and it was bipartisan. Now, we have majority and minority views where the minority views of the Democrats, they say, yes, this was terrible, but there was really nothing you can do about it, and that the Republicans are wrong in pointing out all these things. But the report does show a direct connection between Lerner's political views and how the IRS treated conservative taxpayers, and especially those who sought to participate in political discourse. And, you know, I think she was able to exert this type of influence because her managers failed to stay informed about what she was doing. And she willfully, in my opinion, discriminated against conservative taxpayers, and I don't think many people doubt that for a minute.
Absolutely, and you know, it's a very frightening situation for America to find herself in, and that is not being able to trust the bureaucrats who are really doing a lot of damage. As you point out, the unionization, protecting those who really have no accountability because they are so protected. As a leader there in the Senate, are you finding though that your colleagues get it, that they're as passionate as you are in trying to do right for America when it comes to specifically what the IRS has been doing to us?
Well, the Republicans get it, and I have to say that Senator Wyden and the Democrats were appalled at the incompetence of the people down there at the IRS, but they didn't think, they concluded there wasn't any intention to really do wrong. I don't see how you can read the report without knowing there was an intention. You know, the report shows a clear connection between the president's statements and IRS action. You know, after the Supreme Court struck down parts of campaign finance reform in the Citizens United decision, the president beat on his bully pulpit to make sure everyone knew how upset he was about the decision. And our report shows that the IRS executives were listening, and it wasn't long before they started looking for ways to limit political speech by tax-exempt organizations, and in particular, conservative tax-exempt organizations, or organizations that should have been approved by them that were conservative. Now, our report also shows that the IRS was not acting alone. During the same period, the Department of Justice was considering bringing criminal prosecutions against organizations that it believed engaged in too much political speech. Now, think about that. In the freest nation on earth, where we should have a right to speak our mind in politics no matter what, they were considering criminal prosecutions against some organizations that they thought engaged in too much political speech. And it's clear that officials throughout the administration knew what the president wanted them to do. A, quote, smoking gun, unquote, email directly to the IRS wasn't necessary. They knew it. They figured it out. And the report shows that the IRS has established a pattern of misleading both houses of Congress about whether the IRS targeted conservative organizations. And this included statements by former commissioners and by Lerner herself. My suggestions are that we should make the IRS an independent agency. We should remove the union from the IRS. Why should we have a partisan union that almost 100% of its monies go to elect very liberal Democrats? To have that kind of influence over the most feared and, in many respects, important organization or bureaucracy in our country.
Absolutely.
And we ought to allow 501c4 groups. These are the nonprofit groups that are able to participate in the political, arena to sue for declaratory judgment. These are ideas that we came up with, but without being able to get a president who's willing to really clean up, I don't know that very much is going to happen until hopefully in 2016 when we get a Republican president.
Well, absolutely. We've got your back on this, and I want your colleagues to understand that too. You've got the experience, and you understand that the public does. We protect you, if you will, as a senator, doing your job to protect us. I certainly hope that with your stiff spine, that others around you too will stiffen their spine and help you out on this, because Senator Hatch, I know these type of issues keep you up at night, literally. You know, you're worried about this in the future of the country. So we got your back, keep working hard on it, and love to hear back from you on a good, positive progress and getting to the bottom of it. Thank you, sir, very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all you're doing. I really care a great deal for you, and I think you know that.
Well, I appreciate it very much, sir. Thank you. We're honored.